Welcome to the Allegheny Wood Products Safety Training video. This video will guide you through the various safety and health practices that Allegheny Wood Products expects all employees to follow. As this video has been designed to meet the needs of all Allegheny Wood Products facilities, there may be additional site-specific information that will be discussed with you upon completion of this training video. If at any time you do not understand the information discussed, please feel free to press pause and ask your supervisor any related questions. Allegheny Wood Products is committed to the safety and health of their employees. Welcome to the new employee training for Sawmill employees. This training session will discuss the potential hazards related to sawmill operations. Although technology methods have significantly changed the way sawmills operate today, many safety hazards still exist. Working in a sawmill is one of the most dangerous occupations in the United States. Massive weights and falling, rolling, or sliding logs can be very dangerous. Sawmill equipment can also be hazardous, particularly when workers use machines improperly or without proper safeguards in place. Lacerations, severed fingers, sprains, and strains are all some of the injuries that have occurred at Allegheny Wood Products. The log yard is the start of the sawmilling process. This is where the logs are unloaded from the truck and placed into the appropriate log storage pile. Equipment used in this area include log loaders, log trucks, and knuckle boom lifts. When working in or around the log yard, you must be aware of the following hazards. Improperly unloading logs from the truck can cause employees to be crushed by a falling log. Loads could fall and strike or crush workers due to equipment failure. Employees can be hit by the moving log trucks or moving log loaders. Loads could fall off the loaders if they're not properly secured with a grappler. Material could fall on the employees if they're walking under the loads. And finally, this area has very uneven surfaces caused by rutting and bark accumulation. Various hazards associated with unloading logs include causing unstable loads by not properly grabbing logs. Hitting the log scaler with moving equipment is a risk. Dropping loads onto employees could also be a risk. Carrying a load that is too heavy for the equipment can cause some significant equipment failure. Photograph number 1 demonstrates what an unstable storage pile looks like. Now, these storage piles could possibly roll over on a worker in the log yard if we're not very careful. Photograph number 2 shows an example of a storage pile too close to live electrical lines. The following video will actually show you examples of log yard unloading operations. It's important that you always be aware of potential unstable conditions, moving objects, and pedestrians in the log yard. Listed here are some safe practices that should always be followed in and around the log yard. First, only properly trained operators are allowed to operate loaders and knuckle booms. There's going to be a sign posted at the entrances to the log yards which will prohibit any unauthorized foot or vehicle traffic. Employees in the log yard must always wear the appropriate PPE. This includes hard hats, safety shoes, high visibility vests, shirts, or jackets. That way, the equipment operators can always recognize the pedestrians in the log yard. Allegheny Wood Products operators shall also ensure that truck drivers always exit their trucks prior to unloading that truck. Mobile log loaders must be equipped with overhead protection, headlights, horn, and backup alarms. And logs must be arranged to minimize the chance of logs rolling off piles. After the log yard operations, the next step in the process is removing the bark from the log. This is accomplished using either a rotary or ring debarking device. Employees may be struck by logs, flying chips, bark, or other materials in this area. Typical hazards in this area include While the debarker is clearing the bark off the log, it can throw flying bark, chips, and splinters. Occasionally, logs will turn and get jammed into the debarker area. Employees must be very careful when clearing the log not to get struck by the log, pinned between objects, or strain any muscles. This area is also very noisy. If an employee does not follow proper safe work practices, including lockout-tagout, they could be injured by the moving heads, parts, or logs in the area. The accumulation of sawdust may also cause the walking and working surfaces to be slippery. During debarker operations, Allegheny Wood Products has established the following safe work practices. First, make sure that you always lock out equipment whenever it's required. Operators of debarkers should always stay in the cab during normal operations. You never want to use broken log or can hooks, chains, or pry bars. You want to make sure that when you are using chainsaws, you operate them in a safe manner. Make sure that you're always wearing the proper personal protective equipment. Remember, never put your hands or any part of your body in moving parts of the machinery. The pictures show examples of both a Rosser head debarker and a ring debarker. The top photo is a Rosser head debarker and the bottom one is a ring debarker. The following video shows you an example of the operations of a ring debarker.
The next step in the process is head saw operations. Head saws have large blades used for rough cutting and shaping logs. The head saw area consists of the head saw, which can be either a band saw or a circular saw type, the log end feed, log carriage, drop belt, cant catchers, and roll cases. The head saw is used to cut logs into cants or boards. Typical hazards in this area include cuts from the saw blade. Moving carriage may hit or contact an employee. Employee may be also hit by the cant catcher. Employees could be caught in moving equipment, or logs may kick back and strike the operator.
As a part of the head saw operations, the following safe practices should always be followed. Guard the band wheel and blade as much as possible. Be sure that you lock out equipment whenever it's required. Operators should stay in the cab whenever the equipment is in operation. You should always wear proper PPE. Restrict access to the carriage area by providing a barrier and posting warning signs in the area. Also, provide a stop or bumper for the runway for the carriage. No matter what, you never want to put your hands or body parts within the moving equipment. The following video will demonstrate to you the operations of a head saw. A gang rip saw is a circular blade machine used for cutting across and above the cant. The cant is fed in front of the machine pressure rolls and guides. Edgers are used to straighten and smooth rough lumber and or bowed stock by making a cut along the sides of the boards. The result of this process is a straight edge along the stock. Now, with operator involvement, these saws require the operator to position the stock and monitor the automated cant feeding process. Operators may also be required to unjam the saw as needed. Although the sawing operations take place inside the machinery, there's still a risk of employees to get caught at the end feed of the gang saw. This could include loose clothing or other personal items. Therefore, typical hazards in this area are going to include being caught in the equipment, moving carriage or blades, being caught in moving equipment, or flying debris from the outfeed. The gang saw presents a number of hazards as well. Some safe practices to follow to protect yourself from these hazards include: guard all in-running nip points as much as possible, lock out the equipment whenever it's required, make sure that you always wear proper PPE, restrict access to moving parts by providing a barrier and posting warning signs in the area, and be sure that you provide an e-stop or railing for the outfeed from the saw area. With the gang saw, you want to ensure that you never put your hands or body in the moving parts. The video shows the pressure rolls at the infeed side of the gang saw, so you can see how one could easily get caught in the infeed. Now let's discuss trimmer saw operations. Trimmer saws are used to trim rough stock to a certain length. This requires that employees position the boards on the infeed chain and activate the saws when needed. There are a number of hazards related to this task. First, an employee could be cut from a saw blade. Second, employees could be caught between stock and equipment, or employees could be caught in moving equipment. Finally, boards may kick back and strike the operator. The trimmer saw poses a number of potential hazards. The following safe practices should always be followed when operating the trimmer saw. Guard all when running nip points as much as possible. Lock out equipment whenever it's required. Be sure that you always wear the proper PPE. Restrict access to moving parts by providing a barrier and posting warning signs in the area. And be sure that you never put your hands or body in any moving parts in the machinery. The following video demonstrates the trim saw operations. A chipper is a machine that cuts material into small chips and dust. Hazards are created when the workers get too close or make contact with the chipper. Workers could also be injured from the material that's thrown from the machine. To minimize these hazards, appropriate engineering and work practice controls must always be used. Therefore, typical hazards in this area include workers may make contact with or fall into the chipper. Employees could be caught between stock and the equipment. The risk associated with flying chips and debris, or boards may kick up and hit the operator. In order to protect employees from the potential hazards that we've already identified with the chipper, the following safe practices have been established by Allegheny Wood Products. Guard all when running nip points as much as possible. Lock out the equipment whenever it's required. Be sure that you wear the proper PPE and make sure that you stay back from the chute. These videos show samples of in-running nip points throughout the facility. It's important for you as an employee of Allegheny Wood Products to be aware that these nip points exist throughout the facility. Nip points can catch employees' clothes, PPE, or even body parts. Severe injuries such as lacerations, burns, or even amputations could result from these incidents. The first video is a nip point between the chains and the equipment. These are nip points that were identified at the facility and have been guarded. For purposes of this video, the guarding is in place to demonstrate that the risks of nip points shall occur. This second video will show a sample of the risks associated with chains and the potential for materials to get caught in the chains. It is important that you understand you must never wear loose or baggy clothing around these nip points. Working near live rolls presents a number of significant risks also. On January 23, 2009, an Allegheny Wood Products employee was seriously injured when his jacket became caught in a live roll. Therefore, Allegheny Wood Products has come up with the following safe work practices. First, do not wear loose clothing, jewelry, or other hanging articles of clothing around live rolls. Make sure that you tuck long hair up under a hat. Do not reach into moving equipment. Shut down the equipment if necessary to walk between the rotating rolls or when you remove materials. And also, lock out whenever you're removing guards or accessing areas with rotating parts. This includes things such as the tail rolls, live rolls, chains, and sprockets. When employees are working around conveyors, it is possible that limbs, clothing, or PPE could get caught in the unguarded rotating parts. The image provided on the left shows an example of an unguarded belt. These should not be present within an Allegheny Wood Products facility. However, if such conditions are found, you should notify your supervisor immediately. The following video clip provides an example of proper guarding on the automatic sorter. You will notice that the risks related to the nip points have been protected against.
As you can see from the previous video, conveyors can pose a significant amount of risk to employees if they're not properly guarded. Therefore, Allegheny Wood Products has put together the following conveyor safety practices. First, don't perform services on conveyors until the motor disconnect is locked out. Service conveyors with only authorized maintenance personnel. Be sure that you keep your clothing, fingers, hair, and other parts of the body away from the conveyor. Don't remove or alter any conveyor guards or safety devices. Make sure you know the location and function of all stop and start controls. And keep all stop and start control devices free from obstructions. All personnel must be clear of conveyors before starting. Keep the area around the conveyors also clear of obstructions. And never reach into a conveyor to grab material. These two photographs show an excellent example of Allegheny Wood Products' efforts to protect the employees. The top picture shows the implementation of an e-stop cable on the conveyors. The bottom picture shows how machine guarding can be in place to protect employees from conveyor risks. Strapping and banding operations also pose a number of risks you need to be aware of. When working with banding, the following safety precautions should be followed. Make sure that you wear appropriate personal protective equipment, including gloves and safety glasses. You want to avoid excessive tensioning that may cause the wire or strapping to fail. Make sure that you always position yourself to one side of the strap or wire being tensioned or cut. Whenever you're cutting straps or wire from the pack, you want to start with the middle strap and move towards the end of the packs. And use the correct cutting tools for cutting straps. Although these images are rather graphic, they also show very real examples of how serious hand injuries can be at a sawmill. It's important that employees understand the dangers of moving equipment, conveyor belts, saw blades, or even pinch points. In order to offer employees with the greatest amount of hand protection, Allegheny Wood Products has established the following guidelines to always be followed. Be alert to potential hand hazards before an accident can happen. Be alert to possible unguarded pinch points. Always use guards, shields, and other protective devices when appropriate, and be sure that you never remove guards. The following hand safety precautions have also been established by Allegheny Wood Products. As an employee, you should never wear loose clothing or jewelry whenever you're working with moving machine parts. You want to make sure that you always wear the appropriate personal protective equipment that's been designated for that task. When you are wearing gloves, be sure that they fit properly and they are rated for that specific task that you're performing. If you're handling boards, you want to make sure to handle them from the sides or the edges and not the ends. This prevents you from being caught between the boards. Finally, make sure that you always use the right tool for the job. When handling saw blades, it's important for the saw filers or other operators to understand that both the circular saw blades as well as the band saw blades could both pose a risk of lacerations. All circular blades should be stored in suitable storage racks located away from passageways or walkways. When being transported, band saw blades should have guards placed over the cutting teeth. When they're in storage, they should be stored away from passageways and walkways. When we look at lumber handling operations, there are a number of issues that need to be addressed. Getting hands caught between the lumber and the cart could be of concern. Therefore, you need to be aware of your surroundings and position your hands on the sides of the boards and not the ends. Pushing carts out could pose a risk. Therefore, you should always get help and be aware of the different species and their weights. Allow enough room between the cart and the chain for stacking. Making sure that you use the right tool for the job. Don't use boards to pry or lift materials. This photograph demonstrates how employees at Allegheny Wood Products properly handle the boards, as well as the appropriate personal protective equipment that should be worn by the employees when handling the boards. All employees should allow the chain to do the work. Several accidents at Allegheny Wood Products have occurred where employees lift boards 2 and 3 at a time, which ultimately causes injury to their back. Horseplay is another issue. Horseplay will not be tolerated at Allegheny Wood Products. This includes sliding boards at each other. Housekeeping poses another risk when scrap boards and cords and so forth are laying along the chains. Therefore, it is important that you clean up more than once a day. Another risk posed is when employees move carts while the lift is over top of the cart. Several accidents have occurred where employees have moved the carts prior to the lowering of the loads. Walking across the chains also is prohibited. They are not walkways and employees must never walk across them. Watch working under a tilt hoist. You never want to stand under one of these in case a load would fall. Dealing with lumber handling issues, one of the things we also need to look at is slings. Slings should be inspected on a daily basis for elements such as cracks, frays, or stretching. The photograph provides an example of a damaged sling and that it was removed from service. Other things that need to be inspected include chains and hooks for any kind of corrosion, deformation, or anything that could weaken the load capacity. Good housekeeping practices are encouraged to be followed by all employees at Allegheny Wood Products. Potential risks related to poor housekeeping include slippery surfaces resulting in employee slips and falls. Protruding objects could present a potential of overhead hazards, or employees could accidentally walk into the object. Combustible environments with the accumulation of sawdust present a potential fire hazard. Poor walkways could result in a serious fall hazard. Poor lighting may also result in visual impairment. Workers may strike their head on nearby equipment or slip and fall due to uneven surfaces or poor lighting. Therefore, in an effort to encourage general housekeeping practices, Allegheny Wood Products has provided the following recommendations. Make sure that you leave your work area clean and orderly. Keep all aisles and stairways open and free from debris. And be sure that you put all trash and scraps into proper containers. Make sure that the floors are free of debris. The photograph provides an example of boards that were left lying on stairs at an Allegheny Wood Products facility. When you're working around mobile equipment, you must always be aware of the surroundings and the potential risks of mobile equipment operating nearby. Some precautions that should always be followed around mobile equipment include: be aware of mobile equipment around you. Make sure that you wear reflective vests when you're around mobile equipment, and never walk under suspended loads. In addition, it's very important that you understand this training does not authorize you to operate mobile equipment. Only employees with specialized training will be permitted to operate loaders and fork trucks at Allegheny Wood Products.
For all employees working around loaders or in the log yard, the following precautions shall always be followed. First, maintain visual contact with the loader operator when working near the loader. Second, communication must be maintained between truck drivers, log loaders, and people in the sawmill. Third, only authorized personnel should be in the log yard. Fourth, heed all of the alarms and signals on the loaders. Fifth, wear the appropriate personal protective equipment when working around loaders. Sixth, do not walk directly behind a loader. Seventh, do not stand in between the loader and the load. And last, do not ride on the forks at any time. Electrical issues are always a grave concern in sawmills. Some typical electrical hazards that you should be aware of include electrical shock and burns. An electrical shock occurs when electric current passes through your body. This can happen when you touched an energized part. Arc flash burns. An arc flash can occur if a conductive object gets too close to a high amp current source by equipment failure. For instance, while opening or closing disconnects. Arc blast impacts. The heating of air and vaporization of metal creates a pressure wave that can damage hearing and cause memory loss from concussions and cause other injuries. Flying metal parts are also a hazard. Were you aware that electrocution remains to be the fourth highest cause of industrial fatalities? The effects of these electrical shocks can range anywhere from a tingle to cardiac arrest. You'll notice the table on the right gives you some examples of the amount of current and the effects associated with that amount. From levels of current from 0.5 to 3 milliamps, one may experience a slight tingling effect. However, it could be something more severe. 1.5 amps actually causes tissue and organ damage, and one will start to notice burns. As previously mentioned, arc, flash, and blast are often related to the use of electrical disconnects. These arc, flash, or blast can produce temperatures up to 35,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Statistics have shown that at least 2,000 people a year are admitted to hospitals for arc flash injuries. More than half of the fatalities occur when servicing energized equipment with less than 600 volts. Arc flash blasts can cause severe burns, hearing loss, concussions, and other injuries. It can also kill you. Now that we have discussed the risks associated to exposure to electricity, Allegheny Wood Products provides the following electrical safety guidelines to be followed by all employees. In regards to electrical cabinets, employees should know not to open electrical cabinets due to the arc flash potential. In relationship to employee authorization, land under one of these in case a load would fall. Or it is important that you clean up more than once a day. The cold winter months will bring additional hazards for employees that work outside in the elements. These are some common tips that Allegheny Wood Products has provided that you should always consider when working outside in the winter months. Watch your step. Watch where you apply water. Watch for snow melting and then freezing. Make sure that you slow down the forklifts and always wear appropriate clothing. Finally, we have some miscellaneous safety requirements related to the sawmills. Air guns must always have an OSHA-compliant tip. If you ever identify a damaged guard, you need to make sure and report that immediately and have that fixed. Bench grinders need to be properly adjusted during and after use. And finally, fire safety equipment should never be blocked. Although Allegheny Wood Products has provided this training to you in an effort to prevent any potential occupational accidents or injuries, sometimes they still occur. Therefore, a protocol has been put into place by Allegheny Wood Products in case an incident would occur. Accidents must be reported immediately to your supervisor, no matter how minor they may be. You need to report the accident to your supervisor prior to seeking medical treatment. You have now successfully completed the Sawmill portion of this training DVD. Please press stop at this time and complete the exam that's been provided to you by your supervisor.